What's up, YouTube? This is Zerco, and we're back for another episode of A Noob's Guide to Minecraft. And today we will be doing some mining and, wait for it, some crafting. Not necessarily in that order, but we're here right where we left off, and we have got an inventory full of nice stuff. So now we need somewhere to put that stuff. So we're going to take a look around and try to find a spot to make a starter base. So I will be right back when I find the perfect spot. Alright, so I think I might have found a decent spot here. It's on this little peninsula. See, we got a turtle spawning ground over there. That'll be good for later if we want to use turtles for anything. It's got a decent amount of space to build on, and I think it should fit our needs just fine. I've been walking around and it seriously is taiga biome as far as the eye can see. So I'm thinking that being close to this ocean will be our best bet at going and finding other biomes that we might need. So that's the plan. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get some of these trees chopped down, flatten out the ground for us to build on, and we'll take a look and see what we got. Alright, so I took some trees down and I flattened it down a little bit, replacing some of the stone with dirt so that it'll look a little bit more natural once the grass grows back over. And I think this should be a good starting spot. We might need to clear back a little bit more land at some point, but in terms of our initial house goes, I think this will be a good spot to start. So let's get some materials ready and let's build it. So when you're building your first base, a couple things to consider are that A, you're not going to have a whole lot of resources, especially not a lot of various types of resources. So you're going to have to kind of work with what you got. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of tips when building any kind of a house or a base or anything. So, especially in the early game, you're going to want to start off with some kind of a frame so that you can understand what kind of scope you're working with here. So a really good way to do that is to just start off with these little boxes, right? And then you're going to expand those boxes given how much space you want to work with. So what we're doing here is we're just going to throw down a real quick framework and then see where we stand with that. Okay, so once we've gotten a framework worked out, we're going to want to realize how much space is on the inside. So here, we're not going to have that much space. So it might be beneficial for us to widen some of these things out a little bit. So if we bring this out here, gives us a little more space there. And we can probably bring this one back one block. And we'll put this whole thing back 2 blocks here. So now when we look at it, we got a lot more space than we had before, but it's still the same basic shape. So now we're going to think about what we want to do in terms of block textures and wall placement. So I like to use logs as kind of a structure block, posts and pillars that are holding the whole thing together. Um, Especially with the early game, you're going to thank yourself if you do more of a rustic, almost medieval style build or like a cabin style, because those materials are going to be a lot easier to collect. They're not going to require as much infrastructure. And with a few simple rules, you can make it look pretty good. So I'm gonna get drafting on a couple of things here and we'll see how it looks. And here's a pro tip. If this guy shows up early game, you don't have any emeralds anyways, there's only one thing to do with him. Alright, so I got an outline of where I want the walls to go. And I drafted up a little bit of a facade wall here just to give a palette for how we're going to make the exterior walls look. So now it's just a matter of collecting the rest of the resources that we need and building it up. So let's get right on that. All right, so we got the basis of the walls in place. And while it's not as great as maybe you would build late game, I think this is perfectly suitable for a starter base. Now, in terms of how to improve your starter base from looking like a box to looking like an actual home, there's a couple of principles that you need to consider. Okay, so number one is depth. Depth can be a hard thing to do and work with on such a small scale like this. So an easy way to add depth is with these pillars are all one block out. Now we're changing that up because if it was exactly the same all the way around, it would kind of take away from it as well. But we're playing a little bit with how deep the walls are set in. Now we're also working with this angle here where we're going on a diagonal. That's going to help a lot as well to take it away from that basic geometric shape. Now, third thing that you can do that I love to do is just work with some stairs and slabs. I haven't used much in the way of slabs on this build, but stairs can be a great tool for just adding a little bit of detail to an otherwise monotonous area of wall. So throw around some stairs, play with them being inverted or straight up, and you're creating these little pockets of depth in the wall that are going to look great once the build is finished. And you can even play around with stuff like this, where it's creating kind of a odd texture, but from a distance, it's going to look really nice. So the second thing to consider when you're doing your walls, in addition to depth, is actual texture. So as you can see right here, I did something that is so simple, but it really does add a lot to the visual appeal of the wall. So we're only working with 3 different blocks here because this is only a couple of days, Minecraft days into our playthrough. But doing something just as simple as throwing in some stone bricks and throwing some cobblestone in not necessarily any kind of pattern, but just an odd assortment, is going to do a lot to add texture to your builds and make it not so monotonous in terms of both color and of the actual block texture itself. So something real simple that you can do to really improve upon the visual appeal of your build. So once you got that done, you can go one of a couple of ways. Now, a lot of people like to just throw the roof on and get it over with right off the bat. I am definitely a roof procrastinator. If you look at my personal worlds that I just play casually in, a lot of the times there will be several buildings that don't have any roofs at all because they're newer buildings and I just dread having to do a roof. I mean, I can do it fairly well, but it is a total pain when you get to it. So I like to come inside and do the floors and any interior walls first. So let's get this dug out and we'll talk about flooring. So after digging out the floor area, our base is that way, by the way, I decided to go out in search of a nice block to put on the floor. And I stumbled upon some pumpkins. Now, if you find pumpkins early in your game, you're going to definitely want to grab them. Now, pumpkins are a great and super easy material to farm. They are wonderful for villager trading and just all around a good thing to have. So, I also found one lonely oak tree. So hopefully we get a sapling from this because oak wood is a great thing to have on hand. So after adventuring a little bit further in that same direction, I came across a desert biome. Now, we're not getting terribly lucky in terms of different wood types in this playthrough. So, I figure what I can do is collect a whole bunch of this sand and we can make a nice sandstone floor. And we'll see how that turns out. So I'm going to collect a bit of this, and my shovel's just about to break. Oh, I'm going to collect a bit of this, and I will get right back to you at the base. Something about boat rides into the sunset is just so romantic. Alright, so we're back at the starter base with a couple of stacks of sandstone, and let's just start placing it down and see how it goes. So here's a tip, and this applies to all aspects of building in Minecraft. There are people out there who can just see the space, and just imagine exactly what they want to do with it. But that's not going to be the majority of us. So something that I would suggest would be put out a palette and just create a blank canvas and say, okay, I know I want the main block for this floor, this wall, this ceiling, whatever it is, to be sandstone, for example. So you lay it all down, you say, okay, well, this looks pretty good, but how are we going to improve it? And then you just take small steps incrementally, and that's how you get something like this. Now, nothing too drastically changed here. All I did was I added in some smooth stone slabs, a little bit of sand for texture, and look at how much better this floor looks now than the blank canvas of just sandstone that it was before. Now, with floors, you don't want to get too overly detailed because a lot of it's going to get covered up anyway, so something that looks good when the room is empty might not look so good once you start adding actual furniture and things in there. But I think this is a good step in the right direction considering our lack of resources. So I need to go to sleep and we will get cracking again in the morning. All right, so now let's start planning out exactly where we're going to put everything. What I'm thinking right now is that we start putting utility items like the crafting table and the furnace back here in this corner because we can have it nice and tucked away where it's out of the way, but we can still get some more stuff in here if we wanted. That would include the stone cutter right there. Now this block is a very important block if you're going to do anything in terms of large scale building. It's going to save you a ton on resources. Definitely 10 out of 10 would suggest. Alright, so now I'm thinking that we'll put chests over here. You're going to want to consider how much storage you have in a starter base. Now, you're not going to need dozens and dozens and dozens of chests, but you are going to want probably around about 10 or so double chests that you can store things in, just so that you have enough space until you start building an actual base. So I'm thinking we could put some chests in this corner over here, and we can get about 8 or so, and that should last us for a little while. Now the bed's going to be the tricky part. With this layout, there's not necessarily a bedroom per se, unless I wanted to move this stuff out here and put the bed back there, which might be a good idea and might actually be something that I do. Yeah, let's do that. All right, I'm thinking that this is a better layout. It's going to be a little bit more functional for us, and it looks a little bit nicer. Now, your starter base is not going to be the prettiest thing in the world, so don't get too obsessed over the aesthetics of it, because at the end of the day, we're not going to be staying here for very long. This is just kind of a pushing off point that we're going to be using to basically sleep and store our stuff until we can get to the point where we can amass enough resources and find a suitable spot for a real base that we're going to be staying in for a longer period of time. So, there's only one thing left to do, and I was talking about it earlier. It's the roof. Now, there's a lot of different ways that we could do the roof, but let's talk about that in just a minute. First, I gotta sleep. Alright, so there's a couple of different ways that you can do a roof. Now, what most people do is they just go for the classic A-frame, and that can look pretty good most of the time. But when you're working with irregular shapes like this, it can get a little bit difficult. Now, I think what we're going to do for this roof, as long as the colors don't clash too much, is we're going to take some smooth stone and we're going to make that kind of capped roof. Where you have the full block and then the half slab coming out of it. I think that will be both an easy way that we're not investing too much time into this little starter base, and it'll look good while we're at it. So, in addition to those, you can do things like a domed roof, which is arguably the most difficult. Um, and you can even just do like, it wouldn't work with this kind of a build, but create like a paved roof. That's more for like modern or industrial style builds. So I think what we're going to do with this one is we're going to do that capped style. Now, in order to do that, we're going to need a whole bunch more stone because we're pretty much out of stone. Now, I did already start a little entrance to a mine down here. I need to light it up, but this is a good time to talk about creating a little mine. So a mine is going to be something that's super useful to you because this is going to be how you get down to do strip mining and how you're going to collect a whole bunch of resources in the early game. So the best way to do that is to dig a staircase down like this. We're going to make stairs and put them on these blocks so it'll be easier to get up and down. But the thing that people tend to overlook is how high you should make it. Now, this one is 4 blocks high in most places. Um, but you're going to need at least 4 blocks in order to put the stairs in and not hit your head. So a good way to do that is just to count out 4 at the top there, and then as you're going down, all you do is just step 1 down here, and you don't have to count it anymore. So when you're making a mine like this, you're going to want to go down to Y level 12, because that's where we're going to eventually be doing our strip mining at. So it's a good idea to just kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone there. And unfortunately, we're getting not a lot of stone in this mine so far, but that'll all work itself out. So I will dig this down a couple dozen more blocks, and I will meet you at the bottom. All right, so here we are at Y level 12, and it didn't really take too long. I've already made 1 drop off, but let's go see how much stone we collected. All right, so we got 4, nearly 5 stacks of cobblestone. So that should get us our roof, but we're gonna be cutting it pretty close, I'm gonna imagine. So now we just gotta get it all smelted up, and a good way to distribute coal in your furnaces is 8 pieces of coal is gonna do 1 stack of items. So I like to put in about 16 at a time, so that way I can do an entire stack, and then even if I don't have coal on me the next time, I can do an entire other stack. So I'm just gonna plop some of this coal in each one of these furnaces, maybe evenly distributed a little bit better, and I will get back to you when this is all done. Alright, so we got all of our stone smelted up, but taking a look at the time, unfortunately that's all we're going to have time for today. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll catch you guys later. See ya!